non-binding. It's not legally binding. It doesn't mean anything, as in nobody has to do anything. But, in my opinion, Danielle Smith has exposed who she really works for. It ain't Alberta. And if you guys took 15 minutes of your time to just go read the MOU, you're going to realize that it's all about the 2050 WEF agenda of net zero, carbon taxes at $130 a ton on April 1st, going up to $170 a ton by the end of 2030, the Mark Carney tier, and carbon capture, which literally would make it impossible for Alberta to compete on the world stage if we were to add 39 cents in carbon tax by 2030 and another 5-6 cents a liter in carbon capture technology. Your thoughts, Mr. Crayden?
Well, my thoughts are quite extensive on this because I covered this United Conservative Party annual general meeting quite closely, not just by watching the events proceed, but my inside man there, of course, is legal counsel for the Alberta Prosperity Project, Jeff Rath, who I spoke to before the conference, during the conference, and I just got off the line with him not 10 minutes ago to talk about what really happened here. Now, I'm in complete concurrence with this being a bogus pipeline project, and I'm also in complete concurrence that this is a very dangerous step forward. Just listen to how the Liberals answer the questions every day. Pierre Poilievre, I give him full credit for this. He can see this is sheer folly. He knows what's going on. He figured this one out. But every time he asks a question about, is this government really committed to a pipeline? The environment minister stands up and says, this is all about the green energy. This is all about Canada's commitment to eliminating fossil fuels. And I think this is like a Monty Python skit right now in the House of Commons, because it's like people are talking about completely different things, and Poilievre knows this. I think this is one of his best hours. He understands what's going on here. He knows this is going to be virtually the end of his political friendship with Danielle Smith, and I think his greatest supporter, and Poilievre has been her greatest supporter. And this is, in some respects, very, 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 very sad for both of them. But what amazes me here, Nico, is that we have a premier of a province who is the leader of a party that is anywhere from 80 to 85% sympathetic towards independence, sympathetic to full support. That's huge. That means that party has basically gone from a federalist party to an independence party, from a separatist party to a separatist party. And yet Danielle Smith thinks she can keep leading that party, although she's revealed on Radio Canada, and this is something Jeff told me, I missed this entirely. And in a French interview, she said she will be there leading the charge for federalism in 2026, which, interestingly enough, reveals that there's going to be a referendum apparently in 2026. And she'll be up there with people like Jason Kenney and other proponents of federalism. And that, to me, is an indication that I don't think she understands the gravity of her situation right now. I don't know how much longer she can stay on as Premier of Alberta, leading a party with only 15% support for her federalist position. Now, it was a brilliant speech on Saturday. And I've said this repeatedly. I said this in a Substack column last night. I couldn't have written a better speech for her. And I said that to some of her close advisors. I said, brilliant speech. I think a lot of it was Danielle. I know you guys had something to do with it. However, it was good because here she was talking about an MOU with Mark Carney without mentioning Mark Carney, because she knew it was going to elicit a tremendous boos and backlash from the audience. Then she goes through all of the Alberta agenda stuff. And I hate to use this term, but it fits for this occasion. You can almost see her throwing the red meat out. and she's getting 6 or 7 standing ovations because she's out there against the transgender policy. She's out there against the censorship policy. She's out there against invaders coming into your house and you're not allowed to take them down. She's out there supporting all the things that party supports. She forgot to mention, though, Mark Carney doesn't support any of these things. and so she's left basically saying, I've allied myself with the Prime Minister of Canada, although I'm not going to tell you his name right now because I know it's going to get a big blast of booze, but I've allied myself with somebody who doesn't agree with any of these small c conservative libertarian policies implemented by my government. So what is she left with? I'm not sure. I don't know how. She pulled the rabbit out of the hat. In my latest column, next time around, it's going to have to be not just a rabbit out of the hat. It's going to be one of these great Houdini escape acts if she expects to get out of this one, because it's just going to get worse, especially when this pipeline project completely collapses and she's left leading a party where she doesn't have much in common with the future of Alberta.
You know, we've been covering this extensively, my co-host and I, on the political orphans. I've been a big proponent of Danielle Smith. I like the way she was walking the line between being part of Canada and leaving space for Alberta to decide what they wanted, to really just say, you know, if that's what you guys want, perfect. Yet now it seems since the MOU, she kind of changed her tune publicly. She's not walking a line anymore. She's literally saying out loud, I'm a federalist and we need to trust Mark Carney. Because that's basically what she said word for word at the presser after the MOU, where she was explaining to us how Alberta would get, it was a good thing that Alberta was going to get a provincial carbon tax at $130 a ton, which is $50 more than what the federal government is charging right now. She was also bragging about carbon capture, as in what a bogus technology. There's no way to be competitive by trying to remove carbon from oil and gas. It's made out of carbon. Like, can we call a spade here? To me, she looked like an, I don't want to call people names, so she exposed herself, let's say that. To me, when I was listening to her speak, because I covered the event live, I could not believe, my mouth was on the floor. Because I'm not from Alberta. I don't know the UCP. I'm not behind the scene talking to people in Alberta. At least not when it came to Danielle Smith. And now my mind is blown, but I've spoken a few times with Nadine Wellwood, which ran against her. And she's like, she's been saying that. What's so surprising about this? She's been saying that for years, that she's a federalist, that she doesn't want Alberta independence. Yet, even when she was asked, because Jason Levine was able to ask her a question during the AGM, and he asked her if she was given a new mandate, as in the people of Alberta would after the referendum would say, we want independence, would you take that new mandate and apply it and make sure that it happened? She avoided answering the question completely. She ran around the question like a good politician. She was politicking. So even that she won't touch anymore. So it seems that she played a good game until the MOU, but now all the cards are on the table, and that's what I've seen ever since, is that she's out now. We know she's a federalist. She doesn't want Alberta to be independent.
Yeah.
But the question I have for guys like you and for the people in the audience, because again, I'm on the outside. I just chose to cover Alberta's independence very seriously because I knew mainstream media and even the conservative, and I say conservative as in, I'm air quoting here, the conservative content creators are not calling it for what it is. I'm basically one of the only ones out there that is calling out Danielle Smith for what she's done. Wow. And people are not enjoying the fact, oh, you and me both. That's what we're talking about it right now. But I want to ask to the audience, and I want to ask you is, has Danielle Smith betrayed Alberta, or is she playing 5D chess? Because a lot of the complaints that I'm getting on posts like the one that you reshared today, where I'm explaining what Danielle Smith signed on the MOU, people are like, oh yeah, but she knows it's not legally binding. She's just trying to expose Mark Carney. I'm like, okay, I understand that you like Danielle Smith. I like her too. But I got played. She fooled me. She'll never do it again, but she fooled me. But people are so stuck on I like her that they cannot admit to themselves that she is not for Alberta independence. And that MOU, legally binding or not, is still exposing what she believes in, because this is the WEF 2050 green agenda, word for word.
Well, in many ways, Nico, that's one of the primary problems with this MOU is that MOUs are a dime a dozen in government. If you've ever worked in the military, you see them all the time. If you've worked in the bureaucracy, MOUs are virtually just useless pieces of paper. So yeah, it's not binding. So that also means there's no guarantee of a pipeline. And she has put so much faith in this pipeline materializing, I think almost out of nowhere, because I don't know who's going to be running over with their money in hand saying, let me build it, because it's so fraught with difficulties and problems and potential people saying, no, not in my backyard happening here. So as I've said so many times, I've known Danielle Smith for over 20 years. I met her at the Calgary Herald when I was a columnist there, and she was working there as a columnist, and she was also doing some television work. I have all the time in the world for Danielle. I really like Danielle. And I don't think she's playing 5D chess here, though. I think she is trying to put her whole political future in a pipeline because she sees she's lost her party. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And even if you don't really give a damn either way about whether Alberta chooses independence or it stays in Canada, it's a fascinating exercise in political science, what's going on here. I can't think of another time this has ever happened in Canadian history where a provincial leader has literally lost control of their party to separatist or independent forces. Usually when a leader is elected, the party stays federalist or the party was already separatist. Like when René Lévesque became the first separatist premier of Quebec, he was a separatist leading a separatist party. It was very, very, very clear.
Funny how that works, huh?
You know, and here we have Danielle Smith has lost control of her party. The huge amounts of the rank and file now support independence. It's not the same party that she took control of from Jason Kenney. It's not the same party. So I think she's putting all of her political future in this. And as Jeff Rath was saying today, the scuttlebutt now, and what he's hearing from folks in the know, that his sources are that Danielle Smith doesn't really intend to stay on as Alberta Premier forever, that she's looking at the federal scene. And this is why suddenly Mark Carney's not such a bad guy. I'm not suggesting she's going to try to take Mark Carney's job, but she might try to take Pierre Poilievre's job. And you know, Poilievre gets into a lot of hot water. He gets in a lot of trouble not being funny enough, although he did a damn good job at the Parliamentary Press Gallery dinner. I'll have to say that. But he's always being accused of not being human enough, not being understanding or emotional enough. Danielle Smith, of course, is all of those things. She's a very likable individual. So I don't know if she's got that in the back of her head. I interviewed her recently, and like I think I told you, when Mark Carney came up, my jaw almost literally dropped when she said, you know, Mark Carney's not like Justin Trudeau. It's, you know, Alberta alienation, Western alienation, that's all Trudeau. Mark Carney's here now. And I was what? I just couldn't, you know, I couldn't. Is this Danielle? I couldn't believe it, because, you know, she has been a little duplicitous about separation. And I didn't for a minute doubt that she's a federalist. And I think she's made that relatively clear. But she has used the threat of separation to threaten Ottawa, to get what she wants from Ottawa by saying, whoa, you guys, if you don't be nice to us, we've got all these independent people, these people who want independence, and it's growing in popularity. And I'm not going to try to stop it. I'm going to be a neutral arbitrator for the time being. If that's what the people of Alberta really want, then that's fine with me. I'm not going to push it either way. I knew she was a Federalist, but I didn't think she was exploiting the Central Canadian fear of separation, of independence, the way that she really was, to the point that she's turned everything on its head. And now Mark Carney's her best friend. And if you saw that greeting, I showed it on my show last week, where she meets Mark Carney, and juxtapose that with the time she met Justin Trudeau at a health ministers conference, and Trudeau was literally putting his thumb into her finger when he shook hands with her to make her feel like she was subservient to him. Well, this time around, she comes over and she embraces Mark Carney, Mr. Prime Minister. I thought,
did you hear at the presser before they signed the document? Because it went live before they signed the document. They sat down. She looked at him. She's like, okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to sign the document. And as soon as it's signed, you're going to look up and smile at the camera. Mark Carney looked at her and said, yeah, but what if they're taking pictures? They're all laughing, but I'm like, those are not enemies here. Like, let's be clear here. Those people like each other. They know each other. They've interacted with each other. But it's the second time somebody tells me that she wants to be PM, and that's what she's doing right now. That she basically declared that she's a Federalist out loud for everybody to know, because her plan are to get the Conservative leadership, which would be Pierre Poilievre's job. And maybe that's why they don't like each other anymore. That's why Pierre Poilievre is ripping into her so much, because he got it. Maybe they had a conversation behind the scene, and
I think
she
so.
slipped. She probably told him, you know what, your days are counted, and I'm coming for your spot. It wouldn't surprise me. She looks like the type of woman that's not too scared to say things like that. But there's before we talk about Jeff Rath, because man, he got a massive ovation. Like, he's basically, the ovation that he got literally lasted 45 seconds, to a point where he wasn't even able to finish his question because people were clapping so hard. I just want to take a couple of comments here, because they're worth speaking, because I think there's a massive misunderstanding. Don't poke the bear 4190 is saying no industrial carbon tax will be raised until there's a pipeline built. There's so many backwards woke people involved. It's a lost cause from the start. Actually, that is incorrect. If she follows the MOU, the first thing that comes into place is a carbon tax on April 1st. They need to have an agreement for a provincial lead carbon tax at $130 a ton. And let's say that they stick to the MOU. They have until 2040 to complete the construction of the pipeline. So no, Alberta is going to get a carbon tax way before a pipeline is ever built. And it will start, as per the agreement, is April 1st. And then it's carbon capture, I believe, by July. So they need to start, because they need the money to fund the carbon capture pathway project. This one I like. This is one of our followers off of Rumble. MOU, memories of you fucking us. Yes, that is 100% correct. So can you tell us about Jeff Rath? What was your impression of that video? Because you weren't there. You weren't at the AGM either. But wow.
No,
talk about an ovation.
I'd spoken to him just a day beforehand and getting his opinion of what was going to transpire. And as he told me afterwards, he did that. He said, I took quite a risk in doing that, because I didn't know how many people were going to be standing up and cheering. Because I could have said, the majority of people here are supporting independence. Nobody would have got up. I would have looked like an idiot. But he said, I took the chance and I did it, and it really did pay off to show you how many people there are supporting independence. And and he and Danielle were have been friendly over the years. I don't think they are right now. Last time I mentioned Jeff Rath to Danielle Smith, she looked at me like, let's talk about somebody else. But it was interesting, because Jeff really has his pulse on this, and he was reluctant to agree with me that this was Danielle Smith's speech of a lifetime. And from a purely political standpoint, it was a brilliant speech. It was an absolutely brilliant speech because she managed to talk about the MOU, dismiss it within the first 3 minutes of her speech, avoid any booing, avoid any people en masse leaving the auditorium, never mentioning Mark Carney, focusing on all of the accomplishments. Some of them might happen. A lot of them are genuine accomplishments. I have to give her that, what she's done on the whole transgender file. But as I said, she's mentioning things that are highly dubious. She can't tell people that you have a right to shoot an intruder who's coming into your house because right now you don't. It's against the law. It's the criminal code. Is still the criminal code. And this is something Jeff Rath was saying to me. He says, how can she give people legal advice like that if the criminal code has not been amended? And she's talking about the province simply ignoring the gun law. Well, it's nice to say, but might not actually work that way in practice. But what Jeff is basically telling me is that she doesn't seem to realize the gravity of the situation, or she does and is making alternate plans. It's one or the other. And he just like you said, he can't decide whether this is all part of a master plan of hers to leave provincial politics and enter federal politics, or whether or not she's just becoming immersed in all of the bad news that's going on around her, and the fact that she's lost control of the party. It could be either way, and I'm not 100% sure what it is, but I there's a lot of people out there who seem to think she's really smart about this deal, and clearly, if you look at this deal, there's nothing smart about this deal. No. Because, it's going to increase the industrial carbon tax in Alberta by 600%, sixfold. It's going to drive up the price of Alberta oil, which is already some of the most expensive in the world, thanks to the federal government. And what happens nobody's talked about this, Nico. The United States is poised to invade Venezuela, which I think is a pretty stupid thing to do. But one of the reasons they were poised to invade Venezuela is they want access to all that oil. Guess what the Venezuelan oil is exactly like? It's the high sulfur oil that Alberta produces, and those refineries in the U.S. love to take. That's why they love Canadian oil, but they also love Venezuelan oil. This could be disastrous. Putting up the price of Alberta oil at the same time as the U.S. gains massive access to Venezuelan resources. What's that going to do? That could be political and economic disaster for Danielle Smith if that happens.
You're looking, I did the calculations, and you're looking at about 20 to 30% increase of Alberta oil over market price. So if they are implementing the carbon tax at 130 to 170, and they're implementing the costs related to carbon capture, Alberta oil will be at least 20% over the world market. So it will be unsaleable. But, I was digging into this last week, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole, and I came up to the conclusion that what's Mark Carney been saying for months now, that Canada is going to become its best customer. So can you imagine if the U.S. doesn't want our oil anymore because it's too expensive? Who's going to have to buy that low carbon bullshit oil and gas? Canada. So just like hydroelectricity in Quebec, where we produce the most hydroelectricity in the world, yet we pay more than what we sell it to Americans. Yeah. This is what's going to end up happening in Canada. We're going to end up having to buy our own oil. And as per, again, the calculations I made, we're looking at 28 cents more at the pump for $130 a ton. So you have an extra 28 cents a liter just to cover the 130 a ton industrial carbon tax. And once it ends up at 170 or in 2030, you're looking at almost 40 cents a gallon just in carbon taxes. How are we supposed to pay for all those taxes, considering that as per Fraser Institute, Canadians, the average working Canadian spends 42.3% of its income on taxes, federal, provincial, or municipal. I did a research. You know how many taxes we have in Canada right now? Over 100. So depending who you are, you may face 100 different fucking taxes in Canada. And all I hear is more money for the Ukraine. We're sending another $250 million, although Zelensky and his ministers are under investigation for corruption. Surprise, surprise, it's probably pretty tempting to play around with $300 to $400 billion in the past couple of years. But all to say that it seems that all our politicians, and it doesn't matter that you're a leftist or rightist, all seem to believe that we're made out of money, that we can afford to pay more taxes, to pay more at the pump. I don't understand how we're going to continue this way. Maybe that's why MAID is so popular, right? You don't like paying taxes? Maybe have you considered MAID?
That's right. That'll be the next eligibility criteria.
Yeah. Are you paying too many taxes? Yes. Consider MAID.
Do you see the bitter irony in this whole scenario here, Nico? And I think you do, but perhaps you didn't exactly spell that out, which it's beautiful analysis, by the way, in terms of what this is going to do to outprice Alberta oil. But the irony here is that Danielle Smith has got this pipe vision, this tunnel vision on this MOU, because she sees it as a means of selling Alberta oil to the world.
Exactly.
However, the process to get there is going to mean nobody in the world is going to buy it. And that to me is a horrible irony for the people of Alberta if this turns out this way, because this is almost like a nuanced national energy program. You remember what Trudeau wanted to do and what Peter Lougheed, the Alberta premier at the time, objected so strongly to, is he wanted Alberta to sell its oil to the rest of Canada at a reduced rate, not the world price for oil. And of course, Lougheed said, well, we can't do any development. We're going to be losing money hand over fist if we sell it to Canadians at a subsidized price. So Lougheed won. Trudeau backed off on that one. But this is like the price of Alberta oil is going to go through the roof. And who's going to be making all the money off of this? If in Canada, it's going to be the federal government collecting tax after tax after tax. And we won't be able to sell it to those global markets. This is almost like, you think Mark Carney had this one figured out? Because, we like to say that the guys, we both agree on this. He's not a moron.
No.
I think he's imminently corrupt, but he's pretty damn smart when it comes to the big finance stuff, the high finance. I think he had this one figured out. It's going to come
100%.
down. He's going to hijack Alberta oil. He's going to sell it to Canadians at the highest price in the world and reap the benefits. And
that is exactly what I call for.
Brookfield is involved here someplace.
It is. It is. Actually, Brookfield is involved in carbon capture through a company called Entropy. So the technology that Pathway Project is putting in place is a technology that I believe, don't quote me on the price, but I believe it cost Brookfield $2 billion to buy Entropy. So no, they're all connected in the same way as Brookfield just received a $4 billion contract from the Ukraine, after I've been saying for almost 10 months now that Brookfield has been negotiating with the Ukraine department that will be rebuilding the Ukraine once the war is over. So is it a surprise that Mark Carney promised them billions already since becoming prime minister, and he's getting billions back in Brookfield? Just look at the share price of Brookfield since April. Since Mark Carney was elected prime minister, it has gone up more than 33%.
Wow.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. Yeah, I want to take this one before we change the subject. I want to take this one because, again, this is something that I get all the time. Subdog is saying, stop this crap. She has to try to start something now. You guys are making us look silly. Danielle Smith is making you look silly, brother. Brother, come on. Read you know what? Have you read the MOU? Because if you haven't read the MOU, don't post nonsense. Inform yourself first. You don't have to believe me. Don't believe me, but don't believe Danielle Smith either. Take 15 minutes of your time. Go read the MOU. There's a good reason why I've been posting every day about this over the past week, because people believe little 15 seconds reels. They believe little memes that people are putting together. What are the wins of the MOU? And they don't take the time to go read the MOU for yourself. If you're going to argue with me, which I hope people do, go check the MOU. Read it for yourself. It's clear as day. It is the WEF 2050 net emission zero. This is like the third or fourth sentence of the document saying that Alberta and Canada are committed to the net zero 2050 agenda. This is black on white. So just read the MOU. You'll see it for yourself. Unfortunately, it sucks to be played. And that's what I think is happening with a lot of Albertans, is that they feel they got played by Danielle Smith.
I don't know what this individual is talking about when it says she has to start someplace or somewhere. The point, that's the very point. This is a non-starter. There's absolutely no guarantee of a pipeline. And Mark Carney's put everything in place to ensure that nobody comes forth and says, I want to build this pipeline. And it's not going to happen without private sector financing. And that's part of the baseline here as well. And I don't see anybody coming forth and saying, I want to go through the hell of trying to build a pipeline in Canada when I'm going to be hit with all kinds of Greenpeace protesters at every stop along the way. And they're lethal, these Greenpeace protesters now. I'm going to have every Indian band claiming I'm on their land and they want a piece of the action too. I'm going to have the left-wing political parties opposed. Do I really want to go through that? Well, and Mark Carney is just smirking in the distance because he's getting what he wants. I don't know if Danielle Smith is going to get anything out of this.
To me, it was political suicide, at least on the provincial level, what she did last week. Mark Carney, there's a good reason why Mark Carney didn't stick around. He signed the document, got up, and he left. He wasn't there at the presser. Yep. So this is not surprising whatsoever. But I feel bad for Albertans because I do understand why they want to separate, considering how they've been treated for the past 10 years by Ottawa. Unfortunately for them, and that's probably exactly why Jeff Rath got such a great ovation. He just introduced himself. Hey, I'm Jeff Rath. Woo! People knew where he was going with this. They already knew he was going to talk about independence. And I wouldn't be surprised if what Danielle Smith did last week is going to make the independence movement even stronger, because they thought they had somebody to do it. They feel they got lied to. Now they just need to find somebody else to do it. But it's the next few months is going to be very interesting, because Jason Levine was saying that maybe she's going to declare a snap election to make sure she gets reelected right now before it gets too bad. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. She has until April 1st to decide, is there going to be a carbon tax? Is she breaking her own MOU? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But one thing that's definitely... Do you have something else to add to this before we?
I don't think Jason's correct about that, because if she calls a snap election, there is an imminent danger of the party splitting in three directions, and the NDP winning that election. She is not in a position to call any snap election and with any confidence she can win that, because that could be a three-way split in her own party. And we could have the progressive conservatives gobbling up a little piece of the conservative vote and the NDP coming up the middle. So that, I don't think she's even going to consider that. I really believe she thinks, you have to remember, like, if you follow Danielle Smith over the years, this was somebody who crossed the floor when she was in the legislature. She was the leader of the Wild Rose Party, wildly and widely anticipated to win that election to become the first female premier of Alberta at that time. I was one of the columnists at the time saying, Danielle can't lose. Well, she lost. She lost that. And then when she crossed the floor, people thought it's the end of Danielle Smith's political career. And so I never sell her out, never sell her short. But I really do wonder if she thinks her future is in provincial politics, or whether she wants to jump into federal at this point. But don't sell her short as a woman, as a politician, as somebody who I think understands what kind of a mess she's in right now. Maybe not the gravity of it, but she knows she's in a bad situation, and an election's not going to help.
She is not an idiot. That's for damn sure. She is not stupid. That woman is smart. She knows how to play. She knows how to politic. She is not an idiot. That I will never underestimate her, even if I don't agree with what she's doing, because that would be a mistake. So I agree with you. It's gonna the next few months is gonna be interesting. That's for damn sure. I'm just curious to see what it's gonna take for a lot of Albertans out there to stop defending her like she's playing 5D chess, because she ain't. This ain't tactic outside of her paving the way to becoming the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. This in no way, shape, or form was good for Alberta. It was good for Danielle Smith. Let's see how good it was for Danielle Smith. I was thinking that she probably got bought off in the back end. I have no proof of what I'm saying. Those are all speculations. But she got something. And that something might just be becoming the Conservative Party leader of Canada. Because that could be what she wants, right? I heard the same thing you have. And chances are they weren't from the same people.
Yeah.
Now, one other thing I wanted us to talk about is Marc Miller. People were celebrating last week when Stephen Guilbeault was leaving. People are like, woo, celebration. The crazy activist Guilbeault's gone. And then Marc Miller is there. 10 times worse, in my opinion, than Guilbeault. Guilbeault's just an idiot. Marc Miller is a very, very dangerous idiot. But the same minister who calls himself a Christian called the Bible on October 30th clear hatred. He repeated it 2 days ago, saying that it was hateful, that passages about homosexuals were hateful. And as the Canadian Identity and Culture Minister, he is now responsible for retabling Bill C-63, the Online Arms Act. And if we believe what Sean Fraser has been saying for the past few months, this will be retabled before the end of this session, which means before the 18 or 19 of December. So we're looking within the next 2.5 weeks, Bill C-63 is going to be retabled, and that is the most censorship bill that Canada has ever seen. And by the way, for the people that are out there, I got Bruce Pardy, the Queen University law professor, joining me at 8 tonight on my channel to speak about Bill C-9 and Bill C-63, because I learned a lot from that Bill C-63 from the episode he made with Dr. Peterson, Jordan Peterson, about 1.5 to 2 years ago. He kind of blew my mind on that one. But what do you think about Marc Miller, about the fake Christian that calls the Bible hateful?
Well, it's a subject matter that I'm very, very apt to talk about, because I have fought these censorship bills since the inception. And yes, you're quite right that Sean Fraser in September, I think I remember you saying, can you send me that clip? Actually, he promised to bring this back by the end of this the fall session, and I think he will, probably next week. And I predict it's going to be called the Online Safety Act now, because everything's good for you. It's all safe. It's all safe.
Mm-hmm.
Marc Miller is. I look at Marc Miller and I almost see a James Bond villain at times, because he is so condescending, so arrogant, so dismissive of people he deems to be less than his cerebral equals. And I would actually argue that most of the people in the House of Commons probably surpass his intellectual capabilities. But he's very high opinion of himself, very low opinion about just about everybody else, including his own peers in his own caucus. But this is the guy who really wants, I think, to be the first. This has been tried in Europe, by the way. I mean, there are pastors being thrown in jail all the time for reading from the Bible. It never happened in Canada, and it will never happen in the United States unless it's overthrown by a communist revolution. But this has never been something that we actually contemplate in Canada. Banning the Bible or other books of faith, like the Quran, they'll be on the list as well, because it says some things about homosexuality that are not politically correct or in tune with the LGBTQ agenda, or in tune with Mark Carney's pride season is all year round theory. So this is nefarious. This is sinister. This is horrible. And this is a guy who wants to ban the Bible. And once again, who's coming forth right now to say, hey, this is kind of outrageous. Not going to happen in my country. The Muslims are coming forth and saying, stop it. Where are the Christian leaders? Haven't seen a single Catholic. Haven't seen anyone from the evangelical community step forth and say, you're not going to tell me the Bible's going to be banned in my country. No, once again, the Muslims are more upset about it than the Christians. And that's why I work with the Muslims every year to protect our kids from the transgenderism in the school, because Muslims generally seem to be more vocal about expressing their political opinions than a lot of Christians do. I never cease to be disgusted with Christians in this country because they are on the verge of being thrown into jail for reading the Bible. And well, I don't know if that's really something we want to talk about. And it's always that way. And as an evangelical myself, I get absolutely disgusted with people not having the political or the religious or conviction, courage to come forth and fight this. But Marc Miller is a dangerous man in that position, much more, I think, dangerous than Guilbeault, because Guilbeault was focused on the environment, even though he was in this, what do they call identity and culture? It used to be heritage. I don't think he wasn't expressly into, he was always trying to find some environmental things to do in that portfolio. And I have to say, at least he had enough principle to leave the cabinet when he thought it was all going down the drain, which of course it's not. but at least he had the principle to leave the cabinet. And I guess the NDP doesn't want him either, but maybe he can join with Elizabeth May and make it a party of two. I don't know, but can't say I'm sorry to see Stephen Guilbeault leave, but I think I'm even more unhappy to see Marc Miller back, because this guy really, really grates on me.
Yeah, and he also said something a couple of days ago about Bill C9. I don't know if you heard the rumor that behind closed doors, the Bloc and the Liberals have made a deal that the Bloc will back Bill C9, because obviously as a minority government, the Liberals need another party, and the Bloc has 20 something seats, between 20 and 25 seats. I can't remember the exact number, but they need another party to back them. And in order to do that, it's being said, at least the National Post reported on that a couple of days ago, saying that as long as they remove the good faith portion of section 319 in the criminal code, meaning that religious texts like the Bible will no longer be protected against hate speech laws. Basically, as it stands right now, the criminal code calls for up to 2 years in prison if you commit a hate speech crime. So that means that me saying to mentally ill trans individual that women cannot have penises and that there's only two genders would be considered hate speech. And as a Christian, exactly, I could end up in jail for 2 years for stating a fact that is recognized in the DSM version 5 that doctors follow for their medical treatment and diagnosis. So we are living in a dystopian world where this is even considered. But that one worries me. I got to tell you, now that they have backing from the Bloc Québécois on Bill C9, that one has me worried, because this means that we're already past the second reading. If I'm not mistaken, on Bill C9, it's went to committee. That means there's going to be a final vote, and the Bloc backing them means it's passing. We have Bill C63. Is it going to be the same thing?
Yeah,
the Bloc Québécois is going to make little demands, and they're going to push it forward. Like, I'm at a point right now where, those two bills, Bill C9 and Bill C63, cannot pass. Or else Canada as we know it will cease to exist. We will become the UK. I would say even worse than the UK. But we are on the path of complete censorship. And the average Canadian is still asleep, too busy watching football, watching the World Series, watching whatever the fuck series is on Netflix right now, instead of paying attention to the fact that Canada's censorship is about to begin. We will now, or very soon, not be able to speak the truth without facing criminal consequences, as in going to jail for words.
The Bloc has repeatedly said, I've heard them say it so many times in question period, they want the religious exemption gone from all the hate crimes and hate speech legislation that already exists. Of course, they want it taken away from the legislation that's coming. The Bloc is as censorship crazy as the Liberals. The Liberals could probably get this passed with tacit NDP approval. NDP have gone full throttle on censorship as well. The only party that's opposing it really with any vigor is the Conservatives, the official opposition. But the only two MPs that are really, really out there every day opposing us, that's Andrew Lawton, a former journalist, and my old friend Michelle Rempel Garner, who is sometimes on the wrong side, sometimes on the right side of issues, but she's on the right side of this one. She's fighting this Bill C9 very effectively, along with Andrew, who I think is doing a fantastic job.
Leslie Lewis is also fighting
it. Yes, correct. And these we need this opposition, but Poilievre needs to be talking about this as well, because it's as I tell people every day on my own show. It's fine to talk about bail, not jail. Talk about safe streets, safe communities. We're not going to have a safe country if this bill goes through, and it will. No. And as Andrew Lawton pointed out the other day, they are excluding people from the committees. They want to fast track this thing through the committee stage, get it to third reading, and pass it. That's how close we are. And this is deadly because this parliament just came back in September, and we're on the verge of passing one of the most odious censorship bills in the history of this country. This is frightening. But that's the one thing Mark Carney's been damn effective at doing. He's very effective at getting censorship and surveillance bills passed in the House of Commons. Pretty damn horrible at getting a trade relationship going with the United States. Doesn't know what the hell he's doing with fighter jets. Can't figure his way out of a paper bag and other policy issues because he doesn't want to, because it's all about enriching Brookfield Asset Management and Mark Carney. He does that very effectively too. I had to laugh. You talk about how he fled the signing agreement. Remember when he had the king and queen of Sweden over here? In the middle of their visit, Mark Carney's running for the aircraft because, hold it, I got to get to the United Arab Emirates because there's a big deal over there for Brookfield that I got to be there for, because he's literally 2 or 3 days away, either ahead of Brookfield or just behind them at all of these international spots he goes to. The most corrupt regime in the history of Canada, maybe the history of North America. This guy is just setting new levels of corruption.
And this is a question I'm going to ask Bruce Pardy in a few minutes, over the next 40 minutes, is what can we do at this point? If this bill, if Bill C9 and Bill C63 pass and they become law, what can we actually do? How fast will the first case go to court? Because it's not going to take long. Because if you read those bills, by the way, guys, there's no timestamp on this, right? The reporting mechanism in Bill C69 or Bill C63 is anonymous. So anybody could go on the internet, look at something that I said last year, say that it's hate speech, and goddamn, I have a lot of that on my platforms. They can go ask, they can say whatever they want about a post that I made, report me to the government. I will be anonymously brought to court for words. So it's not going to take long for us to see the first cases if those become law. But are we really seeing the end of Canada, or am I being extremely pessimistic? Because I wonder, am I the one that is overly crazy here? Or are those bills really the end of somewhat a portion of free speech that we have in Canada? And I want to get an opinion from a law professor. But it's not looking good for us. It is definitely not for you and I that do what we do. It's not looking good. But as I've said all week, this is my answer to the government. CSIS, if you're paying attention to this, you can go fuck yourself. You can try to censor me all you want, asshole. I'll never fucking stop. So
I think that's, to answer your question, I think that's the attitude we have to have. Every day on my show, I like to talk about resolve to resist. That's what we're doing. We're fighting back. But is this as bad as you say? Are you being overtly pessimistic? Not at all. This is going to be catastrophic. This is why every day I keep flapping my gums about this, because this is really all that matters. You know, it's not, we don't live in a country run by cliches. And I don't care if you're a liberal or conservative, they love to talk in cliches and talking points. And all we got to get tough on crime, and we got to save communities and blah, blah, blah. You don't have free speech, you've got nothing. You don't have anything. You're losing your foundational right. Without free speech, you don't have a democracy. You don't have freedom. You don't have a country anymore. That's what this means. And I don't know how hard I have to shake people to get this into their little heads. This is the end of Canada as we remember it, or as we still know it vaguely today. This is horrendous news, and I predict it's going to pass, because look what happened to the UK. The UK, Great Britain, the cradle of modern democracy, the cradle of modern democracy, the birthplace of the Magna Carta, the birthplace of free speech, that these peasants would think they could talk back to the king. That came out of hundreds of years of the British experience. That has been eradicated within 10 years of mealy-mouthed conservative, followed by a Labour government, a ravenous Labour government under Herr Keir Starmer, that wants to eliminate free speech and individual rights in that country. And he's done it. How many people? Thousands, tens of thousands of people are now littering Britain's prison for being so-called keyboard warriors. And I'll tell you, it's not just the politicians. The judges are gleeful about this. When you watch some of these people, it's like they're talking to rapists or mass murderers. They're talking to them like, well, you thought you were going to get away with this horrible crime of disagreeing with the government narrative, of daring to have your own opinion. You're going to jail for 3 years. It's absolutely outrageous. But no, you can't overstate it right now. We are on the verge of losing our democracy and our country. And I don't know how I'm going to react to this. A part of me wants to say, get the hell out of this country.
Yeah.
Find some place where freedom still exists, because I don't think it's going to exist here much longer. And I don't know if there's a way out right now. The last time we were on this show, Nico, you mentioned something that nobody else that I've seen in any sort of media position has talked about. Pierre Poilievre had a chance to bring this government down before his own non-confidence vote. He didn't want to do that because he was playing politics. He was playing the blame game. I think that was the last chance we might have had to save freedom in this country. And as my advice to the Conservative Party of Canada, look at the 1957 election with John Diefenbaker. He ran on a anti-corruption platform against the Liberal government that had been in power for 22 consecutive years. Mackenzie King and Louis Saint Laurent. And he said, this government's so cozy with the corporations, so cozy with big business, so cozy with the establishment, we need a change. Pierre Poilievre could have done that. He could have talked about corruption. This is the most corrupt government in the history of Canada. We need to get rid of it. But he didn't want to do that because he was afraid of being blamed for what? A Christmas or January election? Oh, can't have that. We'd rather sacrifice our liberties than consider having an early election. No, that was a gross and grave error. And you pointed it out, and I think we all need to start pointing it out.
I'm still pointing it out right now because one of the decisions that I took, I was trying not to be the asshole that I can be with the other so-called conservative content creators out there. As you know, I tend not to want to name them, but I'm really tired of this shit. So the Mario Zelaya, the Jasmine Lane, the Mark Nixons, the Moose on the Loose, the Northern Perspectives out there, they're sucking Pierre Poilievre's cock so much that I can't believe they're able to speak. But they're not calling this. They're not talking about this. They're still defending Pierre Poilievre like that guy can do no wrong. They were praising Danielle Smith for the MOU like it was a win. I don't know what it's going to take. Again, I don't know if they're taking money from those parties. I don't know if a phone call every now and then from Pierre Poilievre is enough for them to walk the political line. I don't know. I'm not aware of the deals that they have behind closed doors, but those people are not conservatives, as in small c conservative. They are shills for the Conservative Party of Canada. And I'm really fucking tired of seeing them yap their mouths every single day while continuing the same cycle that we're seeing right now. Nobody's going against the Liberals. Nobody is pointing out the fact that the Conservatives have sat on their asses and are as responsible for what's happening to us as the Liberals are. And I'm tired of this shit. I'm really fucking tired. And I don't know what it's going to take for Canada to wake the fuck up, but I think it's going to need, those bills are going to need to pass. People are going to need to start getting arrested left, right, and center for the average Canadians to wake up that the people that you're following on the social media don't give a fuck about you. Just like those politicians, they don't care. Because if they did care, they would be saying the exact same thing I've been saying. Read the fucking MOU. Read C2, C8, C9, C12, C63. Those things are going to change Canada to a country that we will never recognize. My son will never get to fucking experience Canada the way I experienced it. And people are just, oh yeah, but you know, Mario's saying that we're gonna be okay. Yeah, no, that motherfucker doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. I'm just fucking irritated with this shit. I'm really tired of this shit. So I'm sorry, I wasn't intending to go on a fucking rant,
Well,
but I'm really irritated by all this shit. Really pisses me off.
I feel like I'm on the Joe Rogan show here. But I'm glad you said it, because these are the same people, you know, Skunk on a Bunk and the rest of them. These are the same people who ignored the ostrich story because Pierre Poilievre didn't want to talk about it either. Some of these people live in the same province as Universal Ostrich Farms. They couldn't be goddamn bothered to even ask a question, even run one episode. I have no time for these people either, because they're propagandists. If you're on YouTube and Rumble and X and all these other social media positions to be a propagandist for the Conservative Party, why don't you just go and work for the party? Go ahead. Get your salary from the Conservative Party of Canada. If all you want to do is say everything Pierre Poilievre does is wonderful, he's fantastic, I cannot criticize him. The Conservative Party, every one of them are beautiful MPs. You're wasting your time and mine, but you're doing a lot of service for a political party that really enjoys getting your free labor. And I'm assuming it's free. I hope it is. I hope they're not getting paid for this. I don't know, though. Nobody's ever come to me, even though I literally worked for Conservative MPs. Nobody's come to me and say, hey, David, you know, if you just get with the program, you know, we can slip you some dollars. I'll tell you, if I ever got the invitation, I wouldn't take it, because my independence is something I value more than anything else. And the fact that I am allowed to criticize political leaders that I'm supposed to agree with. Sometimes I don't. I'm a small C conservative. I'm a small L libertarian on a lot of other issues. But that doesn't mean I have to cozy up to political parties and say you're always right. That's not what I'm on the air for. And that's what you're not on the air for that either. And I think that's one of the reasons we get together every Wednesday night.
Yeah, it's just, you know, it bothers me because I have recorded with Mark Nixon and I actually like the guy. He was a super nice guy. I've chatted with Jasmine Lane. She seems like a super nice person. I have no clue who Northern Perspective is. I don't know them. I don't like their content. They're literally conservative followers. Same with Mario Zelaya. It just bothers me that nobody seems to have the balls to really say what needs to get said. And those people have massive audiences. I have an over 200,000 people audience, and I have no problem saying this. I will continue to say it. But combined, we could literally have 3-4 million audience size, and yet they choose not to. They don't want to create a problem with their followers, so they're not saying anything, or they actually don't believe that there's a problem and they believe that Pierre Poilievre can save them. I don't know what the fuck they're thinking. I don't know. But it baffles my mind that they're not talking about the censorship that's coming. They're not talking to the extent that it needs to be spoken about.
Not at
They're
all.
not being serious about it whatsoever. And it blows my mind. I don't know what it's going to take for Canadians to wake up. And unfortunately, I think it's going to need to get worse so that people really feel it. Everybody sees it. It's flagrant. It's right in their faces. Because until then, I don't know, man. I don't know what it's going to take.
Well, we'll keep fighting together, my friend.
Amen to that, brother. Sorry, we didn't get to your, we didn't get to the EU Safe Defense Pact. We're running out of time. My rant, I think, took over that time. My apologies, man.
That's okay. It was very entertaining. We need more of it.
Yeah, I agree. So on that note, we'll close off the show. I got another one coming up in like 28 minutes. But as always, it's a pleasure. Guys, thank you for being here. Thank you for commenting. Agree with me, disagree with me, it doesn't matter. As long as we're able to talk about it, as long as we're able to have a civil conversation about it, that's all that matters to me. So thanks for being here. If you don't follow David, make sure to follow him. If you don't follow me, make sure to follow me. And we will see you Wednesday next week, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys.
Thank you.